Hey everyone! Welcome to Together with a Wife Like Me. My name is Amanda. It's so good to see you. Man, this is fun. Last week we kicked off Together with a Wife Like Me and we were so excited about it. So many of you won giveaways and we learned and we grew. Actually, we had a lot of fun last week. But now we are kicking off really our guests. And we're going to learn a lot tonight from our guest, Dr. Barbara Lowe. She's amazing. I'm going to get to know her with you. And so you know that we love meeting new friends. It's going to be great. And tonight we're going to be talking about creating a healthy marriage after childhood trauma. How do we do that? Through the lens of Jesus. So that's what we're diving into. Before we bring on Barbara, I want you to know that last week, if you were here, we told you to enter this week's giveaway. Either tag a wife or a few, however many you wanted, or share the video. And so we already have a winner from last week, Caitlin Ness. You are winning Dear Wife, our book, and our Bible study journal of Genesis. So yay. So if you want to win next week's giveaway, which is going to be so fun, same thing, tag a friend, share this. If you're on YouTube watching, hey, simply comment and you'll be entered to win as well. So let's get into tonight's topic. Let's bring Dr. Barbara Lowe. Hey, Dr. Barbara.
Hello.
Hey, this is so good. It's so fun to meet you and chat with you in person. Thank you for being with us.
I'm excited to meet new friends, and I'm so excited to talk about overcoming childhood trauma. It's a topic near and dear to me, and it's literally my life calling.
It's going to be so good. You guys know that we love counselors here. And so I just love tapping into your brain, and not only that, but like the experiences, like you sit on the other side of the chair, right? You are hearing the most difficult things. You're hearing maybe the wounds that are causing a lot of issues. And so we just love that you're spending your time with us on a Sunday night. And also, hey, everyone watching, feel free to comment. We see Tracy over on YouTube. Hey, girl. So feel free to tell us where you're watching from. Dr. Barbara, would you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm a licensed psychologist in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina. I own a large practice. Right now, I believe I'm getting close to having 30 employees, so in 2 different sites, and we're continuing to grow. We're also developing into a training center where we're going to offer training for therapists on the science of therapy and also how that can integrate with spiritual and religious competencies, in particular from a Judeo-Christian point of view. And so I'm excited. I'm all about the legacy now. I love supervising my team. I love training them. I also see clients, and I love having clients come in for 2 or 3 days. I have people sometimes fly in from all around the country, even out of the country, to spend a couple days with me and really go through healing trauma so that they can leave different. So I'm very passionate about that. I have the honor of speaking on several national platforms in these areas of the science of psychology, as well as where the science integrates with Christian faith. So
thank you. We need you. We need you. So thank you for that.
I'm also a wife, and my husband and I have 7 kids together. Now, we're a blended family, and 2 grandkids, and one cute little toy Yorkie poo who's like a daughter.
So cute. That's so awesome.
So we're also all about family. We have them all come over every Thursday night. So family's so important, and that's really an important part of my life as well.
That's awesome. Thank you. It's good to have you. So we're talking about how to create a healthy marriage after childhood trauma. I think when we hear that term, it can feel like, or we might be thinking, well, I haven't experienced maybe like a big thing. So have I experienced childhood trauma? Has my husband? Can you define that for us? Like, what exactly would you how would you define that?
Well, some of us can have full-blown post-traumatic stress disorder or complex PTSD where we've gone through, I'm just going to bring it down into everyday language, where we've gone through too much, too quickly as we were growing up, not enough for too long, or we just weren't getting our needs met, or we were having things come in that pierced our safety in different ways. So when we look at the subclinical ranges of trauma, and most of us have it. I would say if you went to middle school, you likely have it, right? Because we don't come through life unscathed. We have a couple different things going on that are against us. One is we're being raised by people who are imperfect and in situations that are imperfect. Sometimes the peer environment growing up can be really, really rough, really critical. And then we have a negative brain bias that can interpret things in a negative way. And so perception is king. So sometimes, I've had clients before who had a hard time communicating with others and really asking, hey, what's going on here? I'm really feeling this. And sometimes after many, many years, they finally ask the person and they've made up a whole perception that was not based on reality. And I do think that there is, I do believe that there's a real life enemy in the spiritual forces. And so I think that there can be, when he lies, he speaks his native language. So we also have this spiritual piece. And so when we talk about trauma, we talk about the things that have happened to us or the things that should have happened that didn't. It could even be maybe you grew up in a really amazing, positive family, but it had this element of what we would call toxic positivity. And good people sometimes hurt people, right? So I'm not saying your parents were bad. I'm saying they were human, and so maybe you didn't have a chance to talk about negative emotion, and so you've just been stuffing them down, putting them aside, and maybe there's a part of you that feels empty or numb, or maybe rage on the inside, and you're like, what is going on? So when we talk about trauma broadly, we're talking about unmet needs, even for talking about the negative emotions that God gave us. We're created in God's image. God himself has anger, sadness, and both valences of emotions. And then we're also talking about where our safety was pierced, where we were we were sexually molested. We have someone who's an adult or a teenager coming with this 1,000-watt light bulb of sexuality towards us, and we're a little kid with a 5-watt receptacle. That is extremely overwhelming. And so the piercings of safety can be, physical. It can be even what we would call acts of nature, car accidents, etc. And the way that you can know the past is still affecting you is that we say when it's hysterical, it's historical. So when you have cycles where you overreact, and we all do, John Gottman in marriage therapy calls these enduring vulnerabilities. So we all have them. But you have these cycles where you overreact with particular triggers. Those are places where the past is present. And whether we call it trauma or we call it trauma with a little t, these are places where we can heal using the science and also using the person, involving the person of Jesus.
Wow. Okay. My brain. Yeah. Okay. So also, ladies, if you have any questions for Dr. Barbara, she's sharing, feel free to put them in the comments. We see you both on YouTube and from Facebook. So wherever you're watching, we'll see your comment. I have never heard of, I've never thought about trauma as being something that we didn't receive.
Mm-hmm.
I love that statement. I mean, I don't love it, but it's fascinating. Anything that I was trying to write, so I didn't write fast enough verbatim, but something we've received not enough of for too long,
right,
or too much for too long. I think the too much
or
part,
too much too quickly. Think about that sexuality. You're not made for that kind of 1,000-watt sexuality coming against you, even if it's someone trying to perpetrate it. You just feel it in the air that it's too much too quick. So that can be another piece of it. But we do have developmental needs for belonging, for the younger we are, the more we need that consistency, for validation of our feelings. A lot of our parents they have a hard time validating their own feelings. So they have a hard time validating their children's feelings as well, and just being with us in those feelings. before they start to solve the problem, right?
Oh,
We need different things developmentally at different times.
yeah. My mind, I think I'm gonna be chewing on that for long. I think that when we connected and I wanted to have you come and talk, again, like the childhood trauma thing, I think it's something that happened to you. It's like overtly obvious, but the not getting what we need can actually be traumatic. And that I'm sorry, I'm just like gonna sit on that for a long time. Okay.
Well,
Um,
there's something really cool about that. And this is a great time to have childhood trauma. I know, weirdo thing to say. And by the way, I had not I'm just going to say it. I had 9 of the 10 adverse childhood events happen to me. So
wow.
I know that healing does happen, and it is real
Yes.
through psychology and through through therapy.
Yes. With Jesus. And that's why I'm so grateful that
Mhm.
you love the Lord and you are incorporating his
Yes.
healing power through your work and your practice. I'm like so pumped about it.
But let me
Yeah.
just say something real quick. But what we know, this is my little brain here. But what we know is that trauma is stored in the brain. We used to think it was locked in, and up even through 1997, scientists thought you could not change those enduring vulnerabilities. That real enduring change wasn't possible, and now we know from the research on memory reconsolidation. I won't go into that, but it's something. If you're a therapist, look me up because I'm presenting on it in several conferences this year. But we have ways where we have about 5 hours where that memory can be opened up, and we can erase and replace. Now we'll still remember what happened, but we can erase and replace the emotional learning
Mm.
in that space so that
Mhm.
we don't have to live the same way.
Wow.
And there's a marriage therapy that uses that memory reconsolidation window called emotion focused therapy.
Mm.
So if you're a wife like me, and
Mhm.
you want to use a kind of therapy that intersects with the science on healing traumatic memories, I would recommend going to someone that is trained in Gottman therapy, Gottman technique, because that'll really give you some great tools, and emotion focused therapy. So it's a great time to have hard struggles, if you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
We know we have real tools.
Yes. 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 So good. So good. Thank you for that. And Tara, I'm going to get to your question. We will get to it too. So I think, like how you said, it goes without saying, I think, regardless of our experiences, like in some way or another, probably you, your husband, both of you have experienced some level then of something, right? That has been traumatic. So what does that look like in like adulthood, in within a marriage, personally, and then like within marriage?
Yes. So I've created a little tool. So write this down, y'all, called sticky note therapy. And I'm going to tell you how this works in my marriage. So we came up with this by just doing this. We had discussions because when you really work on loving well in a marriage, you love your spouse, you love your husband, and he loves you, knowing about these enduring vulnerabilities. And you have to keep coming back and being like, oh, honey, my enduring vulnerability is showing up again. And for me, my two greatest fears, which are related to my two greatest needs, are fear of abandonment, like being kicked out. Uh, uh, because of things I went through in my childhood, and there's other stuff on the internet about that if you want to hear more of my story. But fear of abandonment, and then fear of being told or feel like it's all my fault. And for my husband, his enduring vulnerabilities are fear of not being appreciated and fear of being alone on the life journey. And I know that those can sound similar, but everyone has their own flavor of enduring vulnerability. So we write those up, his greatest fears, her greatest fears, his greatest needs, her greatest needs, on our mirrors in our bathroom. So that's why we call it sticky note therapy. And you can keep coming back to that, because what you find is you're arguing about the catch up, and it just seems so ridiculous. Or here's one time my husband I said, can you turn down the TV? He thought I was, I guess, not appreciating him. And he thought I was mad. And so he was going to an event and he thought, oh, I guess she's not coming. And he left without me. Well, I felt abandoned, right? And so this was really early in our marriage. So this was a big cry fest. I have to say, this one was a big cry fest.
Right.
This was a big working through of those enduring vulnerabilities. So he will never do that again because that really upset me. But it was where his enduring vulnerability crisscrossed mine. And this is what we find. And part of what we need to do is really talk once we've calmed down, taken those deep breaths, get back into our higher cortex and out of the inner places in our mind, the lower parts of our mind, like the emotional brain and the kind of dumb brain, like the lizard brain. They act so fast, but they are so stupid. They don't think through. So you got to get back to your higher cortex, and then you can talk about where that's linked to your enduring vulnerability, where that's linked to his. And for some of our husbands, they don't like that kind of language. And so we're going to have to change the language. We're going to have to talk in their language and kind of not expect them to be just like our girlfriend. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like, so if I'm hearing you correctly, like our trauma that we've experienced, if it's not been resolved, healed, if we haven't replaced, and we're still like acting out of the emotional part of that trauma, then those biggest, I call them maybe insecurity or my fear, my inner child wound comes out. And then that's, I mean, literally like the words I'm saying, how I'm interpreting what he's doing, what he's saying, what he's not doing, what he's not saying, that's coming through that lens for me. Like whatever that my insecurity is, that I'm not enough for someone. Like I'm not ever enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not wanted. I'm in the way. And so that's then when I'm operating in that, that's going to filter everything going out and coming in. Like it's clouding everything because it's not true. It's through. So is that kind of how you see it kind of being played out when you work with your clients in marriages?
Yeah, Dr. Terry Real has something called core negative image, and in the moments when we see our significant other in that worst possible viewpoint, our husbands, and they see us in that worst possible viewpoint, it's usually that he or she has done 25% of something, right? But there's this 75% that we have to be aware of that's coming from our own history. And so there are two ways to work on this. You can work on it together, which I think some of what we do should be together. We need to go on deep understandings of one another, and we need to do it when the window's open. Not every husband or wife is willing to sit around and just talk about our feelings. So, we have to unpack when we can unpack those things. But we can also use Socratic questions and ask our own self questions. And some of this comes from Byron Katie's work. She's not a therapist, but her work is so good. So she says, is it true? And everything is a yes or no answer. Is it true that my husband thinks I'm not enough? The second question is, can I be at 100% sure it's true? And of course, that's going to be a no, right? And then what is my life like with that thought? And what is my life like without that thought? And then she has some different twists and turns you can do with it. But opening up, finding ways to think outside of that little precious child within, and maybe even parenting her a little bit. I have a tool I call self-momming, just saying, sweet baby girl, I love you. I hear you. I'm here for you. I will never leave you. But let mommy think about this because we need to think about this a different way. And then, what is my life like? What would my life be like without that thought? What if in this conversation, I knew I was enough? How would this conversation feel different to me? And so that can be helpful too.
Yeah. That's good because I think I have found, at least for me, with all of my childhood wounds that in these situations, I always have a choice to live out of that place of hurt. Not like I always do this successfully. I definitely don't. But I have a choice. I can live out of that place and choose almost because I do recognize when I'm operating out of that and I can choose to stay in that or I can choose to change direction and um, choose to believe. Like you say, I love that question. What if I what if I chose to believe I actually am enough? Regardless of, because here's the thing, I know so many of you watching, hey, um, so many wives, their reality is that, like, that maybe their husband was just a jerk, or that he did forget about that important date, or like the reality is XYZ potentially. And yet, in that place, this is our real experience, we individually still have a choice in what we're going to believe about ourselves, regardless of how they're operating or what they're doing or saying or whatever. And so that should hopefully give us a sense of power that although this has happened to me and this has been a part of my story, a part of my path, a part of my negative, what did you call it?
Core
Negative.
negative image.
Yes, core negative image. Like, even though that's how I've been operating, I no longer want that. I don't want that, what has been to affect what is now. And so how am I going to do that? Like, hopefully that's hopefully that's exciting for us to be able to like enter in if that's something new to you. Yes, I just thank you for that. Okay, so we can, in order to change really those maybe those those enduring vulnerabilities, we can ask ourselves those questions. Any other, like, besides obviously flying in to see you for a couple days, which sounds phenomenal, any other things that we as wives can start to chew on, or any tips, things that we can begin to build and replace like that trauma starts?
Yes. I have a tool that I call self-parenting or self-momming when I work with women, and I do make it sound ooey gooey like that because that's how I want it to be. And so what you can do is, so you have a scenario with your husband and you're either livid or you're hysterical in the sense that you believe you're probably overreacting. And and you're getting into those lower parts of your brain that move very fast but don't think a lot. If you can step away, think about the situation, go into your body. What are you feeling in your body? You know, am I feeling okay? I feel these butterflies in my stomach. Uh, I feel now, by the way, what I'm about to do, if it's too much for you, do this with a therapist. All right. Because we need to stay in what's called the window of tolerance. And if you bump out into either shutdown or real anxiety or anger, I want you to stay in that window of tolerance. You know what that is because it feels manageable, even if it doesn't feel good. Anyway, so okay, what am I feeling? So I'm feeling like, let's say, a pit in my stomach after he said that. Now I'm going to scroll back on that feeling in my body to a memory where I felt that way before. And you could, depending on how much you can tolerate, you can go to like the worst memory along that lines, or you can go to a lighter one. And then as you go into that memory, you can I want you to do two things. One is I want you to show up as if you were your own mom or big sister or aunt, or like those of you that are nurses, teachers, whatever nurturing role you play. Like my psychologist self is probably one of my best selves, right? So I can bring Dr. Barbara in there. And then let that part of you, imagine that part of you meeting the need of the little girl that's in this memory. And I want you to be lavish with meeting those unmet needs. This goes back to what we said at the beginning, those unmet needs, those sins of omission. So you can say, sweet baby girl, I want you to know that I believe in you. and I am with you. And I know that what those people said was mean, but you know what? It has no truth. You are enough. You are loved. And then we want to also, so step one, we do the self-parenting. Step two, we bring Jesus, Father, or Holy Spirit in, whichever one you feel you get the ooey gooey with. And I've learned with clients, it's usually one over another, and that's okay. We don't judge that. It just is. And so let's say you bring Jesus in, and what does Jesus say? Jesus says, let the little children come to me. And you could ask Jesus, Jesus, what are you saying to this little girl? Or if you're not used to relating to Jesus that way, you can imagine what Jesus would do with that precious little girl that's hurting. Because God is good, the devil's bad, right? So whatever is going to be good and healing is going to be what Jesus would do. And lastly, you can also bring in a safe other. Remember, we're working in imagination. And so you can bring in your best friend as they are now to minister to that little child. Because when we heal, healing has to do with attachment. And so this is called my heart journey, is part of my heart journey tool that I've created. But we're healing with a vertical healing. We're healing with an internal healing relationship to the self. And then we're bringing in a safe other and having a different experience. And yes, I know what you really experienced was different from that, but we're giving you what you never had. Who else is going to?
Mm-hmm.
You have to let the Lord and your own wiser self now minister to that place.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a tool y'all can use anytime. It's my heart journey tool. And it's just scrolling back on the memory, on the felt sense in your body to a memory, and self-parenting in that place, welcoming God into that place, welcoming a safe other into that place. And there are other things that you can use that. You guys can use that anytime you want.
That's so helpful. And I'm totally going to do that. Thank you for that. That's beautiful. I'll share that. If you guys don't get our weekly email, I'll share these notes and this video and everything in our Friday email, because that I want us to have that. Like, hopefully the goal would be to take what Dr. Barbara is sharing and actually apply it, right? We don't want to just hear. We want to actually apply and live it out, walk it out, and implement this so that in our lives we can experience more freedom. We can experience more healing. We can experience more of Jesus in our world, in our life, in our marriages. So that's beautiful. Thank you for that. Wow. Anything else you wanted to share on that? I loved all of that. Is there anything you feel like you didn't share?
Yes. Well, I have another quicker tool that I think will help because, I don't mean to be hard on our sex because I'm one of us, but we kind of ruminate, right, over things. And so here's a tool that's based on positive psychology that I call Mind Mansion. And this is another tool that I've kind of trademarked, but feel free to take it and use it. So imagine your mind. Let's just do this together. Imagine your mind like a mansion. I mean, billions of rooms, millions of rooms, because truly you can think about anything you want. You can go, like I minored in French, so I can go to, and I've been to France, so I can go to France in my mind. I can go to the mountains of Utah where I'll be next week. I can go to a favorite moment with one of my children. There's so many different places I can go to. So just instead we end up staying in these, like the room with all the spiders in the basement that needs to be remodeled, and it needs to like have the mold cleaned out of it, right? Yeah. And so allow yourself to go into some of these other rooms where you feel safe, where you feel loved, where you feel belonging. All right, so that's a science tool. Now we're gonna take it up, and I know we don't have that much time, so now we're gonna take it up into an encounter tool with the Lord, because Jesus healed through encounter, right? So your mind mansion also has heavenly places in it, because the Bible says that if you believe in him, you're there with him and he's here with you. So I can give you those scriptures if you need, but And so let's go in our mind and let's just be with Jesus in those heavenly places, or have him be here with me, and just using my imagination to be with him. You know what happens sometimes when we use our imagination like this, Amanda? He begins to show up, and there's some kind of revelation where you're like, that was not imagination, that was Jesus, and so we can just be with Jesus. And just imagine, what does Jesus have a bedroom? What does it look like? And just go into these places of curiosity with him. And when we're in curiosity, and when we're in these safe places, and when we're in these places with the Lord, and when we're realizing we have choice about what we're meditating on, then we can be more free. We don't get as stuck. And so that's the Mind Mansion tool, where we took it up a little higher into an encounter tool, or used faith with it as well.
What I love about this is it's actually allowing, well, Holy Spirit is referred to many times in scripture as our counselor and our comforter.
Yes.
And it's almost like, we're being invited into literally allowing him, just enjoying his presence and allowing him to be that for us.
Yes.
In these places that maybe we really, well, obviously need his presence to come into, these hard places we've lived through, these things that we're lacking in our lives. Oh my gosh, I'm still going to be thinking about that for so long. Things that we didn't receive growing up, and allowing him into those places. And it's beautiful. So thank you for that. That's so good.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I do, if you have time. Tara has a question. She says,
I can't give like personal advice, but I can talk in generals, if that's okay.
Yeah, so for sure, yes. If there's someone, so she's thinking, how can we forgive someone that's done that wrong? I think, do you find, like, when it comes to healing and creating a healthy marriage, and we're living with trauma that we have not yet forgiven someone of in our life, how do you help your clients? Like, how can that look for us in regards to then, like, moving forward and being able to heal, and that being tied to forgiveness?
Sure. So when we're talking about forgiveness, we are often talking about therapy from a Christian point of view. So we bring in the Christian tool of forgiveness. There's a lot of research on forgiveness, but as people who consider themselves to be Christians, we are more convicted towards forgiveness, or feel more like this should be part of our walk in life. So a couple different tools we can use for forgiveness, because people hurt us, and it's not fun, and forgiveness is not easy. And some of us actually have a part of our brain that has like, it's related to the disgust instinct. And it's like, if you have more of this particular element in your brain, forgiveness is even a little harder. So sometimes there can even be like little genetic pieces of this. But this is what helps me, and this is what I've used to help clients, and that I've taught on a lot. And that is that when we are talking about the holiness of God, it's like me jumping off a cliff, and I can jump, or me doing a high jump or something like that, and I can jump 5 feet. Or like, if God's here and I'm trying to jump off a cliff to get to God, I jump 5 feet, which I can jump maybe a little bit more than you, because you only jump 4 feet. But it really, when it's like a billion miles, it doesn't matter that much. In other words, I'm much close. This is a hard truth, but truth does heal. I'm much closer to the person who sinned against me than I am to the holiness of God. And when I look at myself through the lens of everything I have been forgiven of, it does help me to forgive. And so what I have my clients do is we walk through forgiveness, and we say, it was wrong, and I forgive based on the forgiveness of God towards me, based on the forgiveness of God. So we're not saying it was right. We're not saying it was okay. It was awful. And then we go through and we forgive our own selves as part of the heart journey at each age and stage of our own lives. That helps as well. Sometimes we need to not just forgive the person, but forgive life. Like there's some kind of statement we made about ourselves or our life at that time where it's like, this was unfair. It never should have happened to me. And that's actually true. But sometimes it gets lodged in there like we were the only one it's ever happened to. And so just kind of for almost forgiving life and trusting that God is able to take the worst thing that could have happened and turn it around for good. And anyone who's heard my story knows that I have experienced that. It literally had awful things happen, and God has used it for good. And so we just have to give him a chance. The last thing is pray for those who hurt you. I had a time in my life where there was someone who was doing some things towards my family, and I had an obsessive resentment against this person. And it got to a point where I'm like, I've got to get free of this. I mean, this is on my mind all the time. This is oppressive. I listed down the 10 things I wanted for my own life. And I began to pray for that person for those 10 things at least twice a day. Things like success in my, leaving a legacy, feeling loved, experiencing belonging. Well, two things happened. One is I began to surrender to the love of God through it. I began to get rid of that resentment. And the second thing is the person began to change. I wasn't even expecting that part. Funny.
Yeah.
I was just trying to get free. So hopefully there's some tools there that can help. And these are tools that I actually share with clients. I'm telling you more of my story than maybe I'd tell clients because it's a different venue. But hopefully those two tools can help you.
Thank you. Thank you. You mentioned, Emma's asking the 9 traumas of childhood. Can you go through what those are?
Well, you can look up adverse childhood events, and there are 10 of them. And there are things like seeing your mother abused, having an incarcerated family member, physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, divorce, etc. There are 10 of them. And so we've done a longitudinal research on these ACEs, adverse childhood events, and the outcomes that happen with trauma. So when you look at these and you identify that maybe you have 3 or more ACEs, and so that can mean some negative outcomes, I want you to remember that as a child of God, and with all we know in the science today, you are not stuck. There is hope. You just need to get to some right tools that can really help you. But are these things impacting your marriage? I don't see how they couldn't be.
Yes, that's a thing. I think we come into this thinking we're going to be fine. We're going to be so different than what happened to me or them or whatever. And the reality is if we don't actively, intentionally lean into that area, that part it does matter. And man, we can so easily operate out of that place of childhood wounding. And that just, what it does is it builds a legacy, generational cycles that we don't want. So our prayer is that anyone watching, listening, that you will lean in and actually decide, I don't want to live through that lens. I don't want to live out of that place. I want to do something. I want to take a next step. I want to call that counselor. I want to see Dr. Barbara. And I'm sure you have so many counselors at your practice. And if we aren't in your state, because people are watching from all over the country, but also internationally, is there a website or any other place that we can link to that you would recommend? Because this is kind of important work too, that not every counselor can dive into this. And so it does matter.
Yeah, you really want to get someone that understands trauma and has done a lot of work in trauma. And preferably also someone that can practice from a Christian worldview, or at least integrate that in for you, is comfortable with integrating that in. And yeah, my team can only practice in people in North Carolina. So some really good websites. You can go to Psychology Today is a main referral source, and you can check on what kind of insurance you have. You can say that you would like someone that does Christian counseling, and then you can check trauma, give your area, and that should pull up some people. The American Association of Christian Counselors also has a small referral source, not as big as Psychology Today, but it's going to be more explicitly from a Christian worldview, if that's what you're interested in. And then you could Focus on the Family also has one, and there are a couple others, but those are the big three that I usually recommend.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, ladies, just a reminder, we're giving away things every week. So tag friends, share this video to be entered for next week's giveaway. Where can we find you?
Yes.
Where can women connect to your resources?
I'm not doing a whole bunch right now with ministry. I'm more just working on my psychological practice. But you can email, let's see, my practice is Greenleaf Psychological and Support Services in Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina. And you could get on our newsletter there. That's probably the best way right now. I'm not doing a whole bunch on social media right now. I'm going to get back to that in the future. The Lord's actually caused me to just kind of take a breather on that. Yeah. And you could also email me at drbarbara@drbarbalow.com. If you want to be on my email list, I can add you to my email list so that when I get back after my Selah, or my little pause to catch a breath with ministry, then you'll start receiving some materials from me again.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And would you mind praying, Dr. Barbara, for?
I would love to. I want y'all to know there's so much hope. And even though we're talking about trauma, I want to encourage you that we thrive with a 4-to-1 positive to negative valence of emotions. So I do want you to work on those traumas. I don't want you to ignore them, but at the same time, I want you to learn to make fun. All right. Make happiness in your life. And you're like, how do I do that? Well, you begin to study yourself and you begin to make sure that you're living a balanced life. So just keep that in mind. You don't want to go all the way down into I'm just going to feel all my pain, right? Mm-hmm. You also need to have fun and laughter. All right, Lord, I thank you for this amazing, beautiful audience, God. I pray for every heart, every inner child, God, that you would touch and pull and heal. Father, I pray for visitations from you to these child parts that have been hurt and that have been wounded. Even people that have realized it's not just the trauma that pierced safety, but it's also the unmet needs. God, and I pray, Father, that you would, I see that you're standing at the door and you're knocking. And I pray, Father, that these women would help you, allow you to come in a fresh new way and begin to receive healing. I sense that some of y'all are just beginning to really walk in. The Lord's going to be opening up doors where he's going to speak in your heart and begin to minister in your heart in some ways where the little girl on the inside of you is going to hear how and feel how loved she is. Lord, I pray for every marriage that you would bless every marriage and that you begin to take off the layers that the past has put on every marriage. And Father, that there'd be fresh renewal, fresh understanding. And I pray for anyone who is in an abusive marriage that I pray protection, and I pray for your deliverance and your help and your healing in Jesus' name. Amen. And for those of you that maybe feel that you are in an abusive situation, I would recommend, number one, making sure you're safe. And two, a dear friend of mine, Leslie Vernick, her books and her work is really good. And so check her out.
Yes. Oh, thank you, ladies, so much. Like, there's so much brokenness and there's so much healing available. So Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Barbara, for being with us. We so appreciate it. And ladies, you know that I love you. And we've got Shannon Guerin on here next weekend with us next Sunday. So don't forget about that. But thank you, thank you, thank you for being with us, ladies. Feel free to keep commenting, keep asking questions if you have any, and I will do my best to get back to you. But thank you so much, everyone. And we will see you next Sunday for an all new show of Together with a Wife Like Me. Thank you, Dr. Lowe.